Sup, nerds, I'm Wes.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Aaron.
Today we're taking a look at Grackles by Fireside Games.
Grackles. Are those the birds that sound like Rihanna, kind of? Like, eh, 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 eh.
So Grackles is a tile and token placing abstract game where you're trying to line up rows of your birds, which are grackles or crows, or as we call them down here. Like you're just trying to get them to line up on telephone lines, and that's how you get your points. So on your turn, you're either placing grackles on the line or placing more lines for other people to score their grackles on.
Or you could spin lines.
The closest thing I would compare it to is Othello. It's an older board game where you're like placing tokens, and with this one you're not like flipping other people's tokens to your side for points. But this, instead of just being a 2-player game, it goes up to 4 players. So it kind of has that same abstract feeling of Othello, but more of a gamer's, like tile placing and just like
There's definitely some take that.
Yeah.
It even says on the back of the box that Grackles is a lightly themed abstract strategy game in which, okay, I don't need to read those.
It says so right there.
But lightly themed is very accurate. It's the most abstract of all of the games that I've played that are like, it's an abstract game, but with theme. This is like, they were like, look, there's not really a theme on here, but like, all right.
But like it's got pretty colors and little birds, so if you're trying to get your kids to play with you, you're like, no, it's a game about birds. You know what birds are.
No, those things we eat.
There's a point where I was like, this feels like a game of just like, I'm going to king make you, or I'm going to king make you. Like, every time I placed a tile, somebody was going to score off of it. So I had to like place it in a way that, well, not every time, but most of the time, you'd place a tile and somebody could score like a 1-point run, a 2-point run off of it or something, or just like extend their line. So it's like, how can I place this where it benefits one person but can still benefit me somehow?
Yeah, it's how can it benefit you enough that you'll take it, but benefit me more in the long run.
And that's what you're talking about there, about the king making is in a multiplayer game. In 3 or 4 players, that's what you're doing. In a 2-player game, it felt really cutthroat and really just, which is true for a lot of games. And I've said it 1,000 times, I'm going to say it one more. Anything that's 2 to 4, 2 to 5, or 2 to 6, generally the 2-player game is a really cutthroat version and feels very different. And this obviously is no exception.
It ended up just being like, here, you can have 2 points, and I'll take 2 points, and you can have 4 points, and I'll take 4 points. And it was just kind of like, what's the point of this?
Well, it was just like who could get the bigger swing. But I bet you, now I preferred not the 2-player game. I would say I would rather, even though there was a lot of king-making times, I would rather have the multiplayer experience. However, this is one that I bet you there will be a lot of people who prefer it as a 2-player game for that very reason. They're like, well, we don't have to I'm not worried about king making. It's not taking that long for it to come back around to my turn where the board could have been messed up. There might be a lot of people out there who are like, ooh, I like it as a 2-player game because it's just like, ooh, I'm getting 1 point more than you. Ooh, you missed this here. You know what I mean?
And because you have the rotate token, so it's not just rotate is out there. You only get 5 rotates during the entire game. So I feel like we were almost a little stingy with those. We're like, oh, I only have 3 left. I don't want to spend it. But I do think that's one of the ways where like I put this down so that I can I'm going to get 3 points. And you're like, yeah, I don't think so. And you rotate. Like, I feel like that's something that if you play with if you're willing to spend those tokens, the game will probably open up a little bit more than it did for us. Once a tile has any tokens on it, it's locked down, so nobody can rotate it or anything. So you really want to set it up such that, especially the person directly after you can benefit on it, leaving something open for you that nobody else can then mess up. And that was the biggest strategy I found. And since I kind of crushed them, I'm going to say it's a good strategy.
I did notice if you didn't place the tiles just like, place one, and then like kind of go in a row underneath it, kind of like a typewriter, just like go across. If you kind of like placed a couple and then extended like the sides so that like you couldn't connect all the way across, you'd have to fill in the center of all the tiles. It kind of made it a little more like, okay, if we lock this down, you don't know what's coming in the middle. Like it's like more of like the long con that maybe it'll pay off.
You're talking about making it square. Okay.
Almost like we built the borders. Like I was trying to build on the border instead of filling in the center for a little bit, just to like see if I could get you guys to lock something down, and then I could throw a tile in the middle that I could just go all the way across it.
And that worked out poorly
No,
for you because
that time it didn't. But
it ended up like that. I was able to do that. But yeah, that's definitely a way to go. And I think one of the ways to keep someone from running away is to be willing to like mess yourself. It's be willing to give somebody else points to keep the person who's in the lead from getting even more points. Because in a multiplayer game, because you can only do one thing, you're like, I'm gonna do this. And it's probably not, like, you can't just say, I'm going to put this here so I get this row, because that's not going to be there by the time you get back. You have to have more strategy to what you put down, just then, I hope this still looks just like this when it gets back to my turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can, like, there's a lot of times when you play something and it's like, I hope they don't see it. But a lot of times it has to be like there's multiple things. So, like, I'm putting this down here and making it look like I'm trying to get this. But what they don't see is that I'm really trying to get this over here. One more thing about the rotate tokens is in a 2-player game, it almost became kind of like a dare of like, I'm going to rotate this, but now it's your turn. Yeah. So I made it so it's good for me and bad for you. If I start it, kind of like by definition, you can end it. Because we both have 5 and I started, but now you need just to spend 1 to bring it back to the way you want it, and you have more, in a sense, rotate tokens. So it kind of became... That's another reason why I didn't like the 2-player game. But again, maybe people like that like dare, whatever. But there was one time where we kind of had... It wasn't a problem in this specific instance because there was a little tail on it. But if there's ever a time when there's 4 just little of your color Grackles right next in a little square, we were like, wait, if that ever happens, how do we remember which way are you extending it this way or that? You know what I mean?
Vertically or horizontally, yeah.
Vertically or horizontally. I think at that point you got to just house rule it of like just let them extend it anyway.
So Grackles really is just a light-hearted, lightly themed abstract game. I think it'd be good to play with younger kids. I think I won't be playing it again with these guys. Again, we talk about our nieces and nephews and my kids and stuff a lot, that I would definitely play it with them if they are interested in it. It's not one that I'm going to be grabbing off the shelf, but if you see me and you want to play it with me, I mean, I'd be down.
I don't know what you're doing in my kitchen, but...
I'm going to say that Grackles is not my favorite abstract game. It definitely is one that is a little too light. It's kind of like comes down to, if I draw this tile and place it, you're going to score points. And like I like abstract games that you put a little more thought into, like further rounds out. Or like, you know, like Sagrada is kind of, you know, it's abstract, but like, you know, you're placing your tiles and it's kind of, it's more individual instead of like this being all in one board. There's too much of like, I'm going to do something and you guys are going to mess it up. And for my abstracts, I like to have my plan and stick to it as much as I can.
I'm going to kind of agree with Aaron. This was not my favorite. Now, granted, I don't like abstracts at all. I always say I like abstracts that have theme on them, so it doesn't really feel like an abstract. This one, even they admitted it, and Justin admitted it, like it's lightly themed, you know. So, granted, points for that, at least, points for admitting it, but I was a little like, it's too abstract, too cutthroat, you know. It's just not Fireside's best. I liked Kaiju Crush better. I liked Hot Shots a lot better. Hot Shots was one of my favorite, and of course their flagship, the whole Panic series, which is I still might actually think that I liked Hot Shots better than that. I do say, we'll end on a high note, that I think the production quality was pretty good. One of my complaints about Hot Shots was that like the fire tokens were really cool, but like the cards were low quality. I felt like they spent the money distributed evenly to make all components pretty solid, and I appreciate that.
If you do like games like Othello, then I definitely think you should check this out, though. And so we're going to have a purchase link in the description box down below.
And while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you'll never be bored. Caca! Caca! You're like the bird in the middle.
What does this even mean?
I don't know.
2 in a hand, 1 in the bush. Bush is full of hands. You get it.
And while you're down there, don't forget... So close. Damn it.
What if that's just how we end it?
Let's do it. That's it. We're done.